Hi, my name is Kaya Nyati. I am a human at JGF. Ndingumuntu wase JGF.
Ifikile ke imini enkulu. Welcome to the Humans of JGF, a JGF holiday special, highlighting brilliant minds behind our vision. And today, as per usual, Andililo Ilolo. I will never walk alone on this here platform. I am with, depending where you're from, abakwa DPE bazothi Kaya Nyati, abakwa IEB bazothi Kaya Nyati. Okay? We have Kaya Nyati in studio today. Hello Kaya, kunjani?
Ndikhona mathabo ndiphilile unjani wena?
Ndiyaphila enkosi. Kaya, for those who do not know who you are and what you do, we'll start with the latter. Kaya Nyati, who is she within this JGF working space?
Enkosi mathabo. It is a pleasure to be here. It is a pleasure to be speaking to our stakeholders who are the backbone of this organization and this program. As you have introduced me correctly so, my name is Kaya Nyati, depending where you come from, or I am Dombe Kaya Nyati if you went to Ngangahu Primary School. Yes. I work for JGF. In my capacity as the head of strategic communications and fundraising.
Yeah.
What that means is that I take responsibility for reaching our audiences, reaching our stakeholders, using all sorts of platforms and tools. And what that is about is actually just about reaching out to them to communicate our strategic messages. And also to ensure that we have sustainability as an organization in terms of funding. So the future of this organization, to a certain extent, is dependent on whether I do my job well or not. So I am the head of strategic communications and fundraising at JGF.
Thank you so much, Kaya. And tell us, where are you from?
I come from the Eastern Cape. The Eastern Cape is huge. I was born and bred in a small town in the Eastern Cape called Maclear. I was raised between Port St. John's and Mthatha. And in my latter years, then I came to live in Johannesburg. So where I come from the Eastern Cape. I'm a citizen of Epondweni.
Epondweni. And now let us teleport ourselves back to when you were at school. Give us your earliest memory of being a schoolgirl.
Yeah. So my grandmother was the sub-B teacher.
That's grade 2.
At the local school. It's grade 2 years now. At the local school in Maclear. Whilst my grandfather was the school principal. Okay. So what that means was that I was a privileged young girl.
Yes.
Back in the day, school inspectors, when they came to inspect schools, they would be hosted at the principal's home. So I had the privilege of going home to inspectors who were deemed to be executive VIP guests in the community when they came. Yes, abehloli, what you would call circuit managers these days. So I was brought up in an education environment. So my fondest memories of school were when I went to school, and I went to school with Umem, and I went to the staff room at break time. And then I went home with Umem, and then I got home. The principal was there, and I could be all over Ununu because he was my grandfather. And when the inspectors came, I was the one who was called for inspectors. And I would come, and back in the day, I used to be very bubbly, so I would.
Back in the day, what are you now? What are you now?
At a small prompt, I could jump and kumsha or dance, whatever it is that you prompted.
Yes.
So my fondest memory of school in the early days were really, really, really fond ones. I actually went to school much earlier than other kids did, purely by my privilege of being raised in the principal's home.
Yes, yes. And what kind of learner then, as a result of that, were you?
You know, I wish every young child could have the kind of attitude towards school. Mine was very healthy. And I think it was healthy for obvious reasons, that it was positive. I was in a conducive environment. I was in a privileged environment, and I enjoyed it. I think, even though I didn't understand the privilege at the time, but now that I understand privilege, I think I was privileged and I enjoyed it.
Yes.
You know, so I had a very positive experience of school. Pity that I left Ngununu or principal's home much earlier in my life, and I went to the big wild world.
Yeah.
So when I was 9 years old, I left my grandparents' home to go and live with my mother in the coastal town of Port St. John's. And that's where real life began. That's where I became a number. That's where I became, like now,
That privilege was no more.
the privilege was no more.
How did that shape your relationship with people and yourself?
But you know, I think I really like how I started off, because as a child, I didn't necessarily see the difference. So school wasn't scary for me. New people were not scary, because that confidence was already built, was already there. You know, so it was easy to integrate. And moreover, I went for the first time in my life when I was 9 years old to an English medium school, which is different to where I came from my grandparents' home. But I think it's the sense of confidence that environment where I came from instilled in me that helped me to survive there.
Yeah. And now thinking about how that time of your life shaped you, I'm very cautious now in asking this question. Who was your favorite teacher?
My favorite teacher was my grade 1 teacher, which is a sub-A teacher. When I do go to my grandparents' village, I still ask till this day, what happened to Miss Gibisa? I mean, obviously, Miss Gibisa is no more, because Miss Gibisa must have been, Miss Gibisa must have been in her 40s already at that time,
Yes.
when she was my teacher. And obviously, I mean, if I am my age now, so Miss Gibisa...
You can only imagine.
You can only imagine. Miss Gibisa was my favorite teacher, and I think she was my favorite because she had the attitude and the compassion and the passion for education that she was able to accommodate and embrace and nurture a young learner in school. I was very young when I was at school. I was very young. So I needed a mother at school. And Miss Gibisa, I think, was exactly that. And I think also because Miss Gibisa was my grandmother's friend, I do believe that I received some kind of favoritism, which I received as it as just a kind human, just as an enabling space and an enabling educator. So for that reason, easily, Miss Gibisa was my best teacher.
Now, you left ukuhlala no makhulu no tamkhulu, and you went to Port St. John's. Did you matriculate in Port St. John's?
No, I didn't. I'm a nomad child. I went to Port St. John's purely because my mother worked for a radio station that was based in Port St. John's.
Okay. And the name of the station?
Capital Radio 604.
Okay.
That's where my mother worked. So when Capital Radio moved from Port St. John's to Auckland Park in Johannesburg, my next move was supposed to have been to move to Johannesburg, to come and live in Johannesburg. But my grandparents deemed Johannesburg to be too wild a world for me to come here. So I was left behind in Mthatha in a boarding school. So I went to boarding school at Ndamase Senior Secondary School, where I learned vernacular language for the first time in my foundation years. And I studied there for grade 10, 11, and 12. For 3 years, I was there. And so that's where I matriculated.
Okay. And now, matriculating from Ndamasa Senior Secondary School, what was your aspiration post? Well, then it being 10, standard 10. What were your ambitions? What were What were the stars saying about Tukai?
I knew nothing else except that I was going to be a journalist.
Okay.
And that's what I'd set my mind on, that I'm going to be a journalist.
Any influence from Capital radio stations?
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, after school, I hung out in a radio studio.
You lived a privileged life, Kaya. Let's just talk about it.
I mean, I hung out.
Let's talk about that.
Look, call it what you may, but I hung out in a studio.
Yeah.
So my little world was that I'm going to become a journalist. And it's a strange thing that when I made this choice and I applied to Rhodes University, I was met with resistance, which was very strange, from my mother, who worked for a broadcasting institution. That I wanted to be a journalist. I was not going to be a journalist because I was going to have a short life. I was going to be killed out in the field, chasing around for news. I mean, we must remember the political landscape at that time was still very volatile. So I want to imagine that my mother's imagination was that I'm going to be crawling around streets looking for news in battlefields.
Especially as a woman.
Especially as a woman. Now that I'm older, I understand that sentiment, where she came from, but it still doesn't make sense. I'm sorry to have to tell her that. That it still doesn't make sense, but I ended up not being a journalist because my mother objected to being a journalist. And strange enough, the lady that who was her friend, the lady that she sent to come and convince me not to study journalism, the strangest thing ever is that Auntie Mbumi's daughter is a seasoned broadcast professional.
Who is Auntie Mbumi's daughter?
Let's not call people's names lest we have money to pay for.
You know what? And that is why you are the head of strategic communications.
Lest we have to pay large sums of money as we can't afford. And we laugh about it obviously now, but your daughter, but your daughter is doing my job. But I have no regrets about it, because I think I spent a career that I'm really, really passionate about, that I really enjoy. I couldn't be in any other place other than where I am now.
Now, speaking about the fact that you are grateful for your journey, please just give us highlights of the various faces of Kaya that have influenced the Kaya that we as JGF get to experience in full glory. You know, sometimes I call myself a caterpillar. I call myself a multifaceted human being. I sometimes worry as to whether am I authentic or not, because I'm just many personalities in one person. But lately, I have no reservations about who I am. I just see myself as a dynamic human being. So if you looked back at me, you would know that I worked for the longest time in advertising, in media advertising, all right? And I had a brilliant career there that I really, really enjoyed, specializing in sales, more sales, advertising sales. Okay. I have been in broadcasting briefly myself, as I narrated to you much earlier, that I was a news anchor in a very small station in the Transkei for a while. I really loved it. It's just that it couldn't become a full-time job. Otherwise, I would have stayed there forever and ever. When I left TV Transkei, I then came to Johannesburg, which is where I met with my advertising career. I stayed in advertising for almost 10 years before I left to join Umsobomvu Youth Fund, where I was heading up getting unemployed graduates into employment opportunities. Okay. I worked very closely in that role with the office of the then Deputy President, Ms. Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka. And I traveled the world trying to get South African graduates into internships out of this country and in this country. From there, I have worked for a freight rail organization. I worked for Transnet. At Transnet, I headed sales, corporate sales for the prestigious Blue Train, a job that I really, really, really enjoyed and really, really loved. Yeah. And it really took me around the world as I was heading up sales in Asia. So I did a lot of South Korea, China, Japan, and India sales when I worked for the Blue Train.
And I've also dabbled into entrepreneurship.
Tell us more.
Yes, I dabbled into entrepreneurship where I did a number of businesses all at the same time. I tried my hand into a recruitment agency, which I did, and I did very successfully. I tried my hand into hospitality.
Okay.
Yes, which is where I still dabble around as a hobby right now. Before I came to JGF, though, I worked for an organization of the Cyril Ramaphosa Foundation called KST, which is where I headed up operations of that entity. And subsequently, as it grew, I then headed up stakeholder relations and communications in there. So that's me, a very multifaceted human being. But I'm happy to be where I am, and I'm enjoying my community where I am. I'm enjoying the work that I do where I am. And here am I.
And now that you are at JGF, what surprised you the most about this organization?
You know, many organizations that I've worked for and that I observe do a lot of your textbook talk about their missions, their visions, and their values. It was a culture shock for me to find an organization that actually lives its values. I think I've shared with my team here at JGF that one of the first things that struck me was how the organization really, really lived the value of, we are here to help you. How can we help you? At first you get shocked. You think, no, there's a trap somewhere.
Yeah.
But as you go on, you actually realize that actually I will never walk alone here. Actually, I can never fall down without somebody picking me up before I hit the ground. It was a shock to me, a pleasant one, I must say, at it. I've gotten used to it, and I'm more actually enthusiastic now about doing it for the next person.
Yeah.
So that's the one big value that I appreciate about being at JGF. And I really would like to hear many of us say they've experienced it, because it's alive for me.
Yes, yes. And now our candidate fellows, our beneficiaries, they are the North Star, the reason and purpose of why it is that we exist. What about them reassures you, Kaya, that the education system in South Africa and South African classrooms are in safe hands?
Matabo, you hit the nail on the head. Our candidate fellows are our North Star. I call them the engine of this organization, which is why for me it's important that we find every opportunity to amplify their voices.
Yes.
You know, and the more I do that amplification of our candidate fellows' voices, the more I stumble into the minefield of their minds, the brilliance of these people, how diverse they are in their thinking, and how sophisticated they are. You know, strong human beings that I really, really trust will change the face of education in this country, because purely of their commitment, their brilliance, their passion, you know, for the career that they've chosen, rather the profession that they've chosen. So in the midst of amplifying their voices, I've also found that they're actually broad-minded. They blew my mind in that way, that they can talk about various different topics at a time, and they link all of them back to the system as a solution. Whatever idea that they have is a solution to this system. And I think we need minds like that for the future of this country.
Kaya, you speak about the holistic nature of candidate fellows and the nature of JGF as an organization. I want us now to take it to the micro, right? Now we know that after you, well, maybe you don't know, but after you, we are going to speak to Petro Gee. What fond memory do you have with her or of her?
My goodness, I admire Petro's mind. Particularly when it comes to digital technological stuff. I wish I could stay with her in my house so she could teach me all the ways.
She's so patient.
She is
teaching.
patient.
So patient.
She is thorough. She is clear. She's a teacher. I don't know if she's a teacher by profession. I don't know, but she's such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful teacher. And that's the one thing I admire about her. And I think I've got a lot more to still learn from her.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kaya, for your time. As you do know, our motto for the year as JGF has been #BeATeacher. To anyone who's listening, who has that amber in their spirit to say, I want to be a teacher, words of encouragement for them.
JGF is here to blow that ember into a flame. Come to JGF. You will not regret it. Thank you, Matabo, for this time.
If ever there was precision, Kaya has offered it to us in this session. Kubulela thina, Kaya, your wisdom and your journey and your expertise, and sometimes even your offbeat humor at times. So Kaya today will come 100% as Miss Boss Lady. 2 seconds later, she's cracking a joke and it's like, where am I? Who is this person? So when she says she has a multifaceted personality, she is a chameleon, no one knows this more than us.
Thank you, Matabo. To the JGF community, mazenetole.
On social media to continue the conversation. We are Jake's Travel Fellowship across all social media networks, and this here series continues. The humans of JGF, the life force behind this organization. Have a great day. Thank you.